Hey everybody, we're back. It is episode 9 review time, and oh my goodness, what an epic episode that was. Whether you loved it or hated it or somewhere in between, you got to admit it was epic and one of, if not the most expensive and comprehensive battle scene ever filmed for television. Certainly, we watched the behind the scenes, as in the making of the Battle of Winterfell. Highly recommend it, by the way. It's a 10-minute feature. You can find it on YouTube. It's the behind the scenes filming the Battle of Winterfell. And wow, just so much went into making this episode, right? I mean, this was just, you can tell just from watching it that they had to have spent huge dollars and huge time and effort. And you got to respect that effort, regardless of what you think of the episode, I think.
A lot of times I think about logistics of stuff, and never mind like the logistics of a real battle, a real army, but also filmmaking. And just imagine if everyone there was working for free. If they just, whoever owned the horses, all the soldiers, if everyone agreed to do it for free, still it would be an amazing production to get that all together. But guess what? I don't know, but I'm guessing each horse present was hundreds of dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't even guess how many thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's probably some record of it somewhere.
Probably a million. I mean, the Battle of Blackwater cost, I think, $7 million or something like that. It was about,
holy cow.
It was about half of, originally we said people it was 15, but that was like the budget for the whole season. And it was just, most of it was on the battle, like a huge chunk of it was Battle of Blackwater. Every season the budget has gone up. I don't know how much they spent on this, but you can tell that a huge percentage of the whole season budget went into it, I would think.
Keep in mind, by the way, you think about all those soldiers, all those horses, the choreographing of it all, just imagining like, they probably didn't do it 2 hours, probably took a few days of filming stuff.
Yeah.
The post-production editing, for people who don't have
massive
editing, should get more credit as an Academy Award. Everyone talks about Best Actor, and I think people know well enough to give credit to the director. I'm telling you, editing is a big deal too. It takes a lot of time, a lot of skill, a lot of patience, and a lot of creativity.
I could, especially what you're saying about the patience rings really hard when you hear that they took 86 hours of footage to film that scene. 86 hours. It'd be edited down to 30 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I mean, damn, that is the scale. It's mind-blowing. Like Kit Harington was being interviewed talking about, yeah, it was hard. I'm like, that's an understatement, man.
Now here's the thing. There was this whole other thing in Moraine. There was this whole other dragon and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
that was
man.
Also amazing and well done, and I imagine expensive.
Yeah, I think that was probably, I totally agree with you, although I'd say that was almost all CGI. Whereas I think the Battle of Winterfell, there was a lot of CGI, but it was a lot of those were real horses. They had 80 real horses. They had tons of extras. They had, these elaborate camera setups. And they said it took all day, 10 hours, just to film Kit Harington punching out Ewan Rian, Jon Snow punching out Ramsay Bolton there. And they said it in kind of a funny way. They said, we spent about 10 hours of Kit Harington on top of Ewan Rian, which is just
smashing his face.
Yeah, that's really funny. So folks, we've got a lot to talk about with this episode. And unlike a lot of previous episodes, we're going to particularly pay attention to these behind the scenes things, the way they made it. And that's just natural because it deserves to be talked about because so much went into it. And also, frankly, there's less plot analysis in this episode than there normally would be. There's plenty of plot analysis still.
Yeah, don't forget,
a lot of things happen.
As always, I saw thoughts that have come to my brain since our last podcast about the last week's episode.
Yeah.
And when we see Littlefinger for sure is here, then you start thinking, okay, what's his next play? How's it going to be perceived by Jon and so on?
And what's going to happen after? I mean, we've got Sansa's going to have to explain to Jon why she didn't tell him about, I mean, that's been a question for several episodes.
Sandra's going to have to explain what she did to
Shireen, maybe. That's really big. Yeah, so there's some big things coming still. And of course, episode 10 is 69 minutes long. There's going to be a lot of things to wrap up. As usual, we will deal with the credits. Rather, not the credits, but after our credits, we will deal with the trailer for next week, what we have to expect. Of course, we'll take into account preseason trailers because now anything we saw in the preseason trailer we haven't seen yet is going to be in episode 10 because that's the last place it could be, unless it's a deleted scene. But that seems pretty unlikely.
Red herring.
That they would use a deleted scene in the preseason trailer. It's possible, but unlikely. Anyway, so we'll get to that at the end. There'll be we have a lot to say about that, but we have a lot to say about the episode before we get to that point. So like you said, Battle of Fire, which is a term that is loosely based on the books call it that engagement, which is it's a bit different in the books without being too specific.
Engagement in Marine? Yeah,
it's called the Battle of Fire. By the fans gave it that name. It's not the books don't call it the Battle of Fire. It's a fan name, and so we're calling it that here. It's for obvious reasons. Battle of Fire, and then the other one is the Battle of Ice. In some ways, it's there's some similarities there, but these are good generic terms to call Battle of Fire and Battle of Ice. Now, I noticed a couple of cool things, a couple of parallels between the battles. They gave us the shot. They tracked the shot of the trebuchet flaming ball from up to down, like a GoPro was attached to it or something. That was really cool. And they did the same with an arrow shot during the Battle of Ice. That was neat. I like that parallel there, going up in the air. A lot of drones, I'm sure, camera drones were used for this. They had a lot of great shots from high up. And yeah, even down to the little details, like, before the battle, we see a couple of shots of some of the guys' faces and as they're like ready for battle. But yeah, let's focus on Marine. It's easy to just talk about all these battles as a whole and to get geeking out and get lost in these and how much fun it was. By the way, 10.0 on IMDb. I love to point out the IMDb ratings because it kind of gives a loose idea of the general reaction. We all have our individual reactions, how we know what our friends and family think, and our friends on Facebook or wherever you go to talk about the episode afterwards. 10.0 after 36,000 votes. That is really something, especially given that, Hard Home was a 9.8 last year. Same director, by the way, Miguel Sapochnik. Guess he's good at these epic scenes, these epic episodes. And if it holds at a 10.0, which is kind of unlikely, even though it's had so many votes already, even if it drops a point or two, it could easily be the most popular Game of Thrones episode of all time. And that is on the heels of the least popular episode of the season, which was No One. And that's, it's still clocked at an 8.2, which isn't bad for TV. But, we don't need to rehash all the problems with that episode. So it's kind of nice to, even unless you didn't like the episode, sorry if that's how you feel about it. Maybe understanding some of these other things will help you like it a little more. But bottom line, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. That's your call. But it is nice for those of us who did like it that it, came on the heels of an episode that was kind of unpopular. So Marine, a lot of fire themes, Tyrion and Daenerys having a nice discussion there at the beginning that, at first Tyrion's kind of like trying to convince Danny's pissed at me. I'm trying to no, things really are like, this is a good sign. It's not good that they're blowing up the city, but it's good that they're reacting to it because it means it's working. It means that they see this threat and they need to stop it. And if we don't let them stop it, then we may transform this region.
On one hand, it's got to be frustrating for Tyrion to have felt like he did such a good job and also have done such a good job. Then for it to kind of have one aspect of it at least backfire. And then mom shows up right at that moment, like it's out of context. That said, though, still, even if he hadn't done anything outstanding in the meantime and she shows up and shit's hit the fan or whatever, think about what it was like when she left. It's not like she left and everything was fine and now it's ruined. Everything was in dire straits
when she left. There was a massacre at the arena. She left during the Sons of the Harpy uprising and came back to a larger scale version of it. I mean, she can't. And she didn't really blame Tyrion. She was just being a ruler and making him explain himself and, being in charge.
Right. You got to also imagine she has some hope in her mind that when she gets back, things will have settled. She like ran through a list of expectations when I return. A fleet of ships launching fireballs into the city probably wasn't on her list. It probably is worse than even her worst expectations.
But at least they still had the city. That was also a possibility.
Right.
They had lost it entirely.
True. And she did have this sort of like frustrated front, but she also seemed reasonable. Yeah. It's especially when you see her seething in anger. She's like, I'm going to kill everyone and burn the cities. And Tyrion's like, slow down. You're sounding like your dad. She was like, all right. She was willing to listen and compromise. Yeah. She could have like blamed it all on him and kicked him out of the city. But instead she listened to what he had said and followed with his advice. So,
and she realized that, at the bottom line, she realized that he did a good job, if not better, given the circumstances. And, you know, he wasn't privy to the military plans. We see that's not his strong point. Grey Worm pointed that out. He himself admitted it. And Dany's like, yeah, I've got a plan. And Tyrion tempered that plan. Tyrion tempered Dany's temper.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. It shows that there's a lot of potential for them to work together as a team in that regard, because Tyrion is, I want to call him sober. he's a drunk, but he's got the sober attitude about things. It's back to the same sort of conversation he had with Grey Worm and Missandei, where he's like, look, we got to be realistic here. Yes, slavery's awful. War is awful or worse, but we cannot get rid of them so quickly. We have to have a reasonable plan, something that's going to work, not something that that feels good. And you know, they had their points too. They had good points too. Don't work with them. They're going to trick you. And that turned out to be right. But it wasn't, they didn't trick them in a way that they really got caught with their pants down. You know, it was like, okay, well, here they come. They're attacking us. But they didn't lose.
I wonder if they would have. Like, what if Dany doesn't show up with an army and dragons? You know,
they might have very well lost. Yeah, and that explains it too. The slavers aren't stupid. I mean, they underestimated the dragons. They underestimated Daenerys, perhaps. But at the time, they had never seen the dragons like used as a weapon. They hadn't seen them like, they were just like so it kind of almost made sense. And it was like, if we're ever going to strike, now's the time. Before the dragons are a weapon, we got to get rid of them now before they're actually.
They seemed to even know the dragons were locked underground.
They did, yeah.
Even if they were a theoretical threat, they're a locked up theoretical threat at this moment. You got to imagine they've got their own master whisperers. You know, these are huge entities with huge forces.
Yeah, the Sons of the Harpy clearly inside the city still, so they're able to. They're going to
get intelligence. Yeah. Now, by the way, I personally didn't read too much into this. It didn't occur to me, and when people pointed it out to me, I didn't read too much into it. But a lot of people have been asking me, "What's up with Varys? Shows up when Dany leaves, disappears before she gets back." I don't think that he's like colluding or against her in any way, and it seems like too coincidental that maybe he did get word that, hey, the Dothraki army's on the way and Dany's got a dragon. He's like, I'm out of here, you know. But I'm not sure why that would be the case. I don't feel like they've set that up, but it seems noteworthy at a minimum.
They haven't even had a scene together yet,
right? Yeah,
at all. So that is definitely. I'm with you. I don't think Varys would turn against Dany. If he does, I don't know that we've been given sufficient reason for it, other than maybe she's dealing with supernatural forces that he doesn't like. But also, he's a realist, and would he really go against her at this point? She's so dominant, so powerful. She has these huge armies. Like, working against that does seem almost stupid.
It also means he's working against Tyrion, which doesn't seem.
It's I agree that it's worth considering, but I agree with you that it's probably not the case.
I think that maybe
it doesn't go beyond that.
I can't imagine maybe he is personally afraid of Dany because he had tried to have her killed.
Yes.
Right. Maybe they even alluded to.
Well, he didn't really try to have her killed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Maybe
he warned Jorah. Yeah, he warned Jorah. That was his letter that was sent to Jorah. Like, it wasn't like, make sure she doesn't die. He wasn't worried about it at the time. He wanted her to live, but it wasn't like part of his plan necessarily at the time. She didn't have the dragons, you know. Then once she birthed the dragons, everything changed. It's like, wait, hold on. Change the plans. She's got real dragons. That's different. I mean, it's hard to imagine. Like, if you really go back and think about it, they were first backing Viserys, right? And like, was that really their plan to back that guy? Like Varys, who's a great judge of character. Like, really? Because he presents it to Tyrion like, she's capable. She's a capable ruler of this. This is the person that we want to install. This is a worthy ruler because they couldn't have been thinking that about Viserys.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if Littlefinger cannot know the nature of Ramsay, maybe Varys cannot know the nature of Viserys.
Well, the thing is, Varys's partner Illyrio had hands-on experience with Viserys, whereas Littlefinger didn't actually meet Ramsay until the end there.
But you can imagine Varys may be aware of the sort of inevitability of things I've mentioned a few times. He might have just known, like in the same way, if you think about it, Ned Stark's going to get himself killed in King's Landing. Varys may know, like, Viserys is just going to get himself killed. That cocky little punk is going to spout his mouth off to the wrong person and just get his head chopped off.
Like, I don't need to worry about it. I'll let someone else have it. So if some of you are noticed here, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got my Tormund shirt on, and I've got my Tormund companion injury. I've got a little. You ever heard the expression? It's no skin off my nose. Well, I lost some skin on my nose on the climbing wall.
You should see the other guy. Oh, the climbing wall.
Yeah, there's a big old blood stain on the wall there. So now I know what that expression really means, and I can't say it anymore. There is skin off my nose, but yeah, Tormund got his face beaten in by Lord Umber, but he got the last laugh, and yeah. So my sympathy injury is pretty mild because Tormund's came out of it just fine. We were worried about him, but yay, Tormund, keep going. All right.
I was worried about Ramsay, that beating that John gave to his face. I thought he might not come back for 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's really not a good thing to be a character that disappears for several seasons and comes back. You just get killed. Blackfish, Rickon, Osha, probably Walder. I mean, Lord Walder's probably going to die, right?
Are you saying the Hound's going to get killed?
There are exceptions. They got to keep us on our toes, right? So another important thing with this Tyrion-Dany conversation, which I thought was really good, just in general, I thought it was good dialogue. And Tyrion brings up the wildfire about, it talks about how, and the specific locations where it was, and it's been set up a few times now. This is.
Yeah, I feel like that was more for us, the audience, to know what Cersei's plan is, rather than for Dany to know.
Yeah, it's going to come up, and it's pretty interesting how Dany also, when Yara and Theon show up, she kind of admits, all our fathers were crappy. Tywin was at least capable. Tywin was intelligent, but he was also a mean guy.
Tyrant,
yeah, he was also somewhat villainous in a lot of ways. He had some good to him, I would say. He was a little more. I would say he was, a cruel and ruthless guy, and that's not good. But he was at least effective. It kind of like some ways he has a lot in common with Stannis in some ways, in that he was effective, but it was kind of hard to love him.
Yeah.
But Tywin was a lot more willing to use cruelty, although Stannis burned people. I mean, that's
yeah. Although that was also toward the end, as Stannis arguably is going insane on a quest to be the one true king, as told by of God, that he has seen real power. I think Stannis, the cruel things he did, he avoided as much as he could, and he ended up doing some of them, and it wasn't his true character, and he was influenced by. Tywin was just ruthless, greedy, corrupt. I mean, keep in mind, he wiped out all. Let's just say that the Castameres were all evil. Yeah. Right? That entire family, was every servant in their castle evil? Was every stable boy? He killed them all, right?
That's why it's a war crime. Yeah. Even by Westerosi standards, it's not,
And even if you can apply a Stalinist mentality to this, a family dies and it's a tragedy, 5,000 people die in a statistic, right? Think how Tywin treated his own son. He's still he was, on many levels, he was a bad. Don't get me wrong. I also appreciate his character on the screen. He was
he's an incredible actor,
interesting and intriguing and entertaining, but at least as terrible as Balon or whoever.
Yeah, it's just that Balon just wasn't very skilled. He was.
Maybe that makes him worse if you have an evil person who's not skilled or an evil person who's skilled.
I agree.
I'd rather have the evil person who's not skilled.
Totally agree. That's arguably, it was better for the Northerners that Ramsay killed Roose, because Roose was, maybe just as cruel, but less he didn't enjoy cruelty. He was just totally willing to do it. He's it's nothing to him. It's not a plus. It's not a minus. It's just a tool. It's cruelty. He's not, but Ramsay liked it.
Kind of like Jaime. Jaime's look, man, I'm trying to be a noble guy here, but I'm going to throw your baby over the wall.
Yeah, it's I won't like it, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I think Roose is more along that line.
Roose is kind of like that. He's just and he wants his reputation to be based on fear. He's people are going to fear me, and they're going to have reason to fear me because I'm totally willing to do these things.
That said, it's not like Ramsay wasn't intelligent. Right?
Yeah, Ramsay's smart. Yeah,
he definitely
he smart.
played things pretty perfectly well. Maybe he could have had a better perimeter set up and scouts identify that.
Should have kept the Vale Army
on its way.
Yeah,
maybe he's a little arrogant mixed up, however intelligent he is.
But yeah, he's not an idiot. He made some mistakes, but he's not an idiot. And John fell for his traps. John got lucky. Even the showrunner said that. He's John got lucky. He didn't. That's why the arrows didn't hit him, and all of a sudden it was flat out. He's the hero, and it's kind of, we're all kind of used to the hero getting lucky. in battles. And they still made it tense, though, despite him getting lucky repeatedly.
We made it. We're a little off track, though. We're supposed to be talking about Marine.
Yes, we are. It's very. We're not staying on track very well today.
Things connect well. I think we're staying on track quite well. Now that I've reminded.
Let's argue about that.
Yeah. So, all right. So we get, in addition to the battle, Dany comes. Tyrion tries to explain. They send the slave master back with a tale of what the fear and what the next step's going to be. Yep.
Like this guy will tell. Let one live to tell the tale.
But we also get Theon and Yara showing up, which I thought was.
Oh, actually, let's back up just a second. I want to talk about besides the wildfire hints, the talking about destroying cities outright.
Yeah.
And how Tyrion's like, look, it didn't take much reasoning for Dany to see that point. She's like, okay. You got a point there. She didn't say that. She just kind of moved past it. That's what rulers do. They don't admit, you're right. Good point. They just tacitly agree and move on.
By the way, Tyrion probably saw it in his own dad too, like destroying the Castamirs like that. Like you have these slave masters that have wronged you, that have wronged society. You want to get back at them. But everyone in that city isn't a slave master. You can't destroy everyone just to punish these feuds.
Yeah, there's plenty of like all the slaves that have been captives for their whole lives. Like, are you really gonna kill them too? And Dany's like, yeah, because it's the same thing. This is a nice parallel between Dany and Jon and how they both have tempers, like this fire in them, and that's of course possibly related to an upcoming reveal about whether this truth of Jon's parentage comes out, and whether that's true. It could, shows he's got some of that fire in him, the dragon in him, maybe. So it's interesting. We've seen that from him before in some spots where his temper gets the best of him, like season 1 when he finds out his father is killed, and he just breaks his vows. He deserts, and he doesn't think twice. He doesn't really think twice about it, even with Sam, like, getting in his face like, Jon, this is wrong. You can't do this. You said the words. And he's like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Father, family, first. Even though he specifically took a vow not to do that, And this is the same thing. I'm talking about Jon again. I'm talking about Marine here. Anyway, we'll get back to that. So I'll try to stay on topic here. I like the way. Okay, so let's go back to what you were talking about with Yara and Theon and that scene. What were you saying there?
One, I thought it was the interplay, the editing, directing, acting between Yara and Dany was pretty good. I thought.
Yeah, it's a great conversation.
Back and forth they had.
It's her first chance to speak to like a Westerosi woman with power.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, and Yara knew, maybe kind of sensed that. Because she played on that a little bit, like, yeah, like your dad, like just like Westeros hasn't had a queen either. Yeah, that was good. I like that scene.
I wonder, by the way, it was directed by the same guy from Hardhome.
Yeah.
Did he also direct these Marine scenes? I sort of assume they have different crews. You know what I mean?
Well, he was listed as the director for the whole episode, but you feel like maybe I don't know. I guess he did. He had a lot of hand in that too, but it's not clear. That would be a good question to look up.
My guess is not, because I seem to remember seeing multiple times when they've talked about the show and the production and everything, how they have different. I mean, they're just in totally different locations.
Yeah, like country. Yeah, like vastly different, like
countries,
thousands of miles away potentially.
They probably had its own director and set design. But
also,
since the smaller percentage of the episode, the overall episode, they give credit to that one director.
And it's the CGI also. I think the Marine was like very heavily CGI, not nearly as much real stuff happening, whereas the Winterfell battle was real horses,
but there's still
extras.
A director in that room with the actors when Yara and Dany are talking to each other.
That's true.
Someone's giving him some direction on what facial expression makes. Someone wrote that scene. It had to be. There's as much execution in scenes of dialogue and character development as there are in scenes of war and swordplay or whatever.
Yeah. So as far as some plot points from that scene as well, as far as what we can expect, they basically convince Dany that Euron is bad news, and that's true. So, because she's like, well, why shouldn't I team up with him? And they kind of give a convincing reason, and especially because they agree to try to, make the Ironborn grow up and get out of their raping ways. Yara agrees to this, and Daenerys is like, yeah, but we're going to be one kingdom. You're going to respect the laws of the kingdom. That's the deal. You get to be in charge of your region, but it's part of the Seven Kingdoms. And Dany's still in charge. I love her, like, what is this? A handshake? I've never seen this before. What is going on? And Tyrion even like holds his hand out, like, yeah, shake it. You know, she's like, oh, that's really funny because she's been in the dirt, she's been a slave, and she still doesn't like. It's kind of a foreign idea to her. A handshake. You
know, it didn't occur to me that the handshake was a foreign idea to her. But as you mentioned it, I don't remember her ever shaking anyone's hand or seeing anyone shake anyone's hand. But I did, regardless, I did think it was interesting that she looked back to Tyrion for like direction of what to do now, whether or not I should agree to this alliance or how do I shake hands. Either way, in front of other people, for her to look to him for direction. So she really does, especially after the confrontation that we just had where she's like, what did you do to my city? We see that they really are aligned.
Yeah.
Right.
And Yara also, the same kind of thing with Yara when Dany demands that they give up their lifestyle. Yara looks at Theon, and Theon's like, yep, we got to agree to this. You know, and Theon, having been what he's been through, you know, is all for it. He's like, yeah, this is not.
Will say, I mean, I have said, based on things I have said, I thought that was awesome. That's almost exactly what I wanted. You know, like it's much easier for me to root for Yara and or the Ironborn or whatever.
They're going to try to rehabilitate their people. Yeah, turn them away from that. And it's going to take some of the things Yara said, like they need to have like an economy. They need to not all be dirt poor sailors who, you know, the appeal of raiding is partly because they're so poor. You know, it's not just that they're all bloodthirsty. Although when you are dirt poor for so long and you have a raven culture, what else? Like it's like being in the ghetto and you're, you know, like, well, I could go maybe get a 9-to-5 bad job, maybe if that, or I could go, you know, maybe deal drugs or something like that. That's the opportunities that are available. I'm not trying to get all political here, but it's similar in that sense that when you're, you know, a young man in this culture and these are your opportunities.
When it's what your father is doing.
And his father. Yeah. It's
your
like
friends at school. It's just what's almost expected, you know.
You have to have some sympathy for the fact that they didn't really have other opportunities to choose like a wholesome career. You know,
I can have sympathy for that, but I'm not going to root for him.
I agree totally. I think that's a good, perfect way to frame it. You're like, well, this needs to change, but I don't hate the people doing it. I mean, if they were like trying to kill me and my family, I would hate them. But you know, sitting here doing a podcast review, you know, we don't face those sort of challenges in real life, so it's pretty easy just to be like, I wouldn't hate them unless they were coming after me. So I really like that. I really like the interplay. Both those scenes I thought had some really good dialogue. Tyrion and Dany, and then Tyrion and Theon, and Tyrion and Yara, and Daenerys and Yara and Theon. I thought that was all really good, and especially Theon not like really owning up to his, you know, he's this is sort of some of the redemption that, you know, is kind of satisfying to see. He's genuinely, at least as far as we can tell, because we don't see inside his head, he seems to be genuinely remorseful. He's like, yeah, no, I didn't kill Brandon Rickon, but I did worse. You know, arguably I did worse thing. I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to get this is not an excuse, but fact is I didn't kill Brandon Rickon. It's a good way to frame it, you know.
I do remember saying way back, you know, when he was going through being tortured and everything, it's hard. On one hand, it's hard to feel sorry for him because even if he didn't kill Brandon Rickon, he still killed 2 other young innocent boys. He still did all these terrible things.
Yeah, and he seems to fully admit it. Yeah,
and yeah, I think that was this season when he said someone said something about justice, and he said justice would be my body. My dead body hanging burned over Winterfell or something like that. Like he knows he deserves to die.
I think that was the season, yeah.
And
it wouldn't have been. I don't think it would have been last season. It could have been though, but I think it was this season. Yeah, I think it was earlier this season for sure. Okay,
but multiple times he has sort of said like, I didn't do this one thing that people were worried about, but I did do a bunch of other stuff. I do deserve to die. All this punishment I've gotten, it's, you know, I still don't know if he deserves a punishment he's gotten. One of the terrible things he did is so hard to comprehend what he's gone through. But he seems on some level he hasn't turned to fuck it, I'll just do whatever now. It doesn't matter. He still seems on some level to be trying to do the right thing. He's not boastful about it. You can imagine many other characters would be boastful about it.
Yeah.
Tywin's brags to Ramsay about how he raped his mom in front of her and hanged it. I was so terrible.
Roose,
Roose Bolton. Yeah, did I say Tywin? Sorry.
Yeah. And it's also with Theon. What's interesting, okay, two more things about Theon here. The opportunity that Daenerys is suggesting is in a way maybe more favorable to him. Like he was with Yara at first, like, yeah, they're independent and they want, it makes sense that they would want to stay independent. But Dany's like, no, you need to rehabilitate your people. That's an opportunity for Theon to do some good. And maybe in his mind, he's like, I can't ever make up for what I've done, but kind of like what Septon Ray and the Brotherhood said to the Hound. It's never too late to stop being bad, stop doing bad things and start doing good things.
Was it Beric or Thoros that told him you can do more good than you've done
Beric.
bad?
Yeah, I think it was Beric.
Yeah, more in the future for you to do that's good than all the bad stuff you've done in the past.
And that's really true. And I think it's applying to a few people here. And this is perhaps Theon is perhaps the most maybe next to the Hound, maybe even more than the Hound is fits in that category really well. But let's take a quick ad break and we'll come back to talk a little more about Marine. There's a few more things we need to say, and then we'll move on to the Battle of Ice, getting more detailed on that. So be right back. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say, one thing I was maybe hoping to see, but it was maybe a little too much to fit in this episode. Maybe we'll get it next episode, or maybe we'll get it next season, is Theon talking to Tyrion about Sansa. There's not a whole lot to say there, but it could come up. They certainly have some things to say to each other about that. Well, mostly Theon could tell Tyrion what's up. And you're like, yep, she's alive. She's out there. I helped save her. That may even help Tyrion come around on Theon, because you can tell Tyrion doesn't really like Theon.
Yeah.
And he was, had some things to say. He's certainly going to be willing to go along with Daenerys' plan. He understands the importance of politics over personal opinions, but this would be something that would help him, maybe not hate Theon so much, or at least come to accept him more. And another thing, I just want to talk about some of the cool strategies and shots they did. I love the moment where the slaver is saying, your time is over or whatever, and you could see Drogon in the back just like start to flap. You can see him just appear.
And Tyrion slightly react to it.
Tyrion's like, what is that? Like, oh. And then we just get this amazing dragon shot. He just flies in and lands on top of the building, and then we later get these overhead shots of Marine with all the buildings and the pyramids and the ships. It's just really, really fantastic looking, eye candy out the wazoo.
The interaction of Dany and the dragon was pretty good too. It looked like she was really on its back, holding on to its spines or whatever.
It was better than the ending of last year when she flew off. It looked more realistic. It didn't look as never-ending story-ish.
It's also another thing too. I bet that they edited out. I bet they had more footage. It seemed to me like there's one moment where Dany's flying overhead and we see at least one of the dragons coming out of the pit or whatever cavern that they're being stored in.
Prison,
yeah. And it seemed like it cut kind of suddenly from that to all three of them flying in the air. I wonder if there's more that they did of having them come out and Drogon landing maybe or whatever.
Yeah, maybe.
It seems like if they went through all the trouble to CGI that up, they would show it to us. Couldn't have been more than 20 seconds. Doesn't matter if the episode's 62 minutes and 20 seconds. But it seemed like a quick edit, so I'm suspicious that there might have been some more there.
But she has shown that she seems to have gained a much higher level of control over Drogon. It's not clear where that control comes from, but it's like he's like a dog that knows its master really well, something like that. The way he lowers his wing for her and just lands right next to her and takes the lead. The other dragons breaking free was a little strange. It maybe requires a bit of an explanation, but you can sense maybe like they sense the presence. They know there's a battle happening. There's fire and destruction. They can hear Drogon's scream, and that like encourages them. Maybe they can sense Dany's presence, and that fills them with dragon adrenaline, which enables them to break loose. They weren't crucial in that battle at all. Drogon could have done that by himself. He torches one ship. The ships get the message that they're helpless, and so she's able to capture the fleet, which is a coup.
I thought that a couple things came from that. one, the dragons getting out could easily have been the result of destruction, like some
they broke the
catapult
wall
might have
down,
busted the wall. Or it even could have been an attempt to get in and try to kill them, especially if they thought they were chained up inside, but they weren't, But I think one thing it shows having the other dragons there is that they're following Drogon's lead.
Yes.
Does that makes sense? And or Dany's lead.
It's like the alpha dragon. They follow a pack. Yeah.
A couple of thoughts that went through my mind there were, one is I felt like they should split up. Like they could be destroying 3 times as many. Like they just overkill, burn that ship to nothing till it sinks. It seems like one flyover and one burst of fire, this ship's pretty much done for.
Yeah.
Move to the next ship. But a couple things. One, I realized the other dragons might not necessarily know to do that. They're just going to do whatever Drogon's
They were following lead.
And so he goes after one ship, they go after the one ship also.
Yeah, none of them fired till she gave the command. That's another example of how they're more tame or more under control at this point.
And additionally, probably a super important thing we haven't mentioned yet here, they even said it in the episode. Thanks for the ships.
Yep. That's why she didn't want to destroy them.
They didn't want to go burn all of them. Just one, make the point in the battle, and now have these ships.
It's like, look, can you stop us from burning all your ships? No, so you better surrender. And they're like, yeah. I mean, they're mostly crewed by slaves anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like they're just like those soldiers ran off when Grey Worm allowed them to. You got to figure a lot of those crews are like, yep, that's that. We've lost, And they're slaves, so it's like switching from one master to another is kind of in their experience already, even though Daenerys is not going to treat them as slaves. So,
also, it was the slave masters were really kind of doing themselves in.
Once they just don't get it.
The power had turned the way they were like, the Unsullied will be sold back into someone else's ownership. Your interpreter sold back, da-da-da. And so then Tyrion's like, hey, soldiers over there, these guys aren't fighting for you. You sure you want to keep fighting for them? And they were out of there. It's clear that there was no real loyalty or respect. You know what I mean? So
and that's
what are they sticking around for?
That's a parallel to what Jon was trying to do, trying to undermine Ramsay. He knew it wouldn't get them to turn on Ramsay, but he thought maybe it would undermine their morale a little bit by doing the same thing. Like, he's not fighting for you. He's not willing to fight for you.
Do you want to just start talking about Jon now?
I can't help myself.
Because I do immediately. There's the thing I want to say about that I might forget later. Ramsay took advantage of his numbers there. He was willing to kill his own men.
Yes.
Remember when the skirmish is happening in the middle, and Davos is like, don't fire. We're just going to kill our own guys. Ramsay's like, loose. He's totally just fire. He'll just kill all of them because he's got more. He had 2-to-1 numbers, and he doesn't necessarily care or have any loyalty to these men. And you got to wonder how much it hurts the next wave. The next time he's like, all right, next wave, go attack. And like, hey, man, don't fire arrows on us. So like he did the first wave. They did go, though. They did go out with quite a bit of discipline.
Yep, it was brutal. Yeah, he's really that's ruthless right there. Pure and simple. And a lot of people predicted he would do that. There's certainly real world parallels to that. Apparently, Edward Longshanks did the same thing. If I'm remembering correctly, maybe I'm thinking of a different Edward. But that's the Edward portrayed in Braveheart. And maybe I'm just remembering what he did in Braveheart, and maybe that didn't happen in real life. I forget. But I'm pretty sure there's plenty of historical precedent for that sort of thing, where as long as the enemy is destroyed, it doesn't matter if you lose some of your own troops, especially if they're allied troops and not your own household troops, which is it's unclear how much of that cavalry was Ramsay's Bolton cavalry and how much of those were allied cavalry.
Or even mercenary cavalry left over from the Battle with Stannis.
Absolutely, that's possible. So yeah, that's just not something they made clear. So it's safe to make a few assumptions and guesses there. But yeah, total ruthlessness, not unexpected from Ramsay. But honestly, I do think that pretty well covers Marine and Dany for now, other than some things we'll talk about in the trailer discussion. We will be returning. Very mild spoiler, we will be getting more scenes from Marine next week. So that's about as far as I'll go with that. I won't be specific. But, well, I guess there's one last thing to talk about, which is the Dothraki arrival. That was predicted. We weren't sure if they would show up so quickly, if they'd still be lagging behind. But, they got there in time, and now Daenerys has this massive army
that she's going to need to feed.
Yeah, she's got a little logistics. We definitely wonder how much the logistics are going to come into play here. They apparently have enough ships now. That was brought up, and that's important. So we might be seeing at the end of the next episode the great exodus. They may head towards Westeros at the end of the last episode. It's one of the things that I think we talked about as a possible last shot for the season You know, that could be it.
Yeah.
That could be like the wall coming down or something with the walkers would be pretty chilling way to end the season. But Daenerys's like armada heading into the sunset would be pretty cool. Maybe not as the last scene, but one of the final scenes. I'm just going to throw that out there as a guess. No trailer spoilers there. I don't have any inside information on that. That's a pure guess.
Yeah, we were guessing that a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
Although I would say I'm a little bit less sure of it now than I was before. I feel like we got to get something back from Varys first. They got to settle these other cities. Well, it's not impossible, but I don't expect it.
It's a long episode because they do have extra time. It's 69 minutes, so maybe they can fit a little more. That's about 15 extra minutes roughly compared to the average episode, which isn't a lot, but it is also a lot. You know,
it's a lot. It's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, considering what they can do in 2 to 3 minutes sometimes, or even 30 seconds, that is potentially a lot. We'll just see. Have to wait and see how they use it. So let's move on. Let's talk about the Battle of Ice, the meat of this episode. There was plenty of awesomeness in the Battle of Fire, but this was more about the Battle of Ice for sure. I guess we'll talk about the pre-battle stuff. A lot of interesting things going on there. The parlay they have is particularly interesting, I thought. We get to see little Lyanna Mormont scowling at Ramsay. I like that. I like the dialogue between Jon and Ramsay. Thought it was pretty solid. I like Sansa's, her fortitude there.
Calling her shot.
Yeah, I like that.
Die tomorrow.
One funny thing that Ashea noticed was she rides off before Ramsay says the thing about the dogs being starved, and it's no big deal to have her be told that by someone else off screen, but it is a little funny to think about. Wait a minute, you weren't there for that line. That's really nothing. The bigger bits here are the undertones of Jon's attitude, and of course what's going on with Davos and Melisandre, and also Sansa. But we kind of mentioned that already, but we have more to say with that. So where to start? Let's start with I like this Tormund Davos interaction. That's a simpler one to talk about. Yeah. I didn't see this coming, but Tormund's lines about how similar about how different and similar their situations were. They both followed a king that thought their king was like the man, the guy that was like the answer, and they were both wrong. And for different reasons, and they had that to bond over. And that was really cool, and I totally didn't see that coming and think about it at all, and was like, that's pretty neat. And it was some pretty good dialogue too. I really like Tormund. I'm glad he's still around. I hope he keeps living. But there's perils with getting attached to a character. But hey, you can't help it sometimes.
Yeah, through the week, as I was thinking about this episode, I was really scared for Tormund because I thought he was the character who was most likely to be on the front lines of battle.
Yeah, other than 1-1 maybe.
Yeah. Although 1-1, I mean, obviously I don't want him to die, but he's barely spoken a word. I'm not as attached to him as I am to
yeah.
That's pretty good, son. But he did make it, and Jon was more on the front line than I thought he might be. I thought whether he wanted to or not, other people would keep him back because it's irresponsible for him to just charge in the front row and just get killed immediately. They need someone to be a leader, not just for this battle, but for the next battle at the Wall. He has this bigger destiny, and he can't just kill. Even if he kills 5 guys before he goes down, it's still not worth him going down.
Yeah, it's not.
and Sansa was so right. She's like, look, Jon, you want to ask me for some advice? And he's like, you're right. What should I do? She's like, whatever you do, don't do what he wants you to do. He's like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. We got to attack. She's like, I'm just saying, don't do what he wants you to do. Don't fall into his trap. He's like, there's no trap. Yeah, I got this.
Yeah,
he just falls right into the trap.
Yeah, it's like exact thing she warned him about. Like, Rickon's toast, dude. Like, no matter what you can say, no matter what we do, Rickon is dead. She had that. She was right. It was a horrible thing to have to come to grips with, but she was totally right. And we all knew that, I think, in advance.
And it's tough. Think totally how many times Jon's been like, oh, what am I fighting, broomsticks? I've been on the wall. I've seen worse than Ramsay. And it sounds like, no, I've seen worse than Ramsay. those wildlings, those zombies, they might be dangerous. They might be scary, but they're not cruel. They're not cruel. Joffrey was cruel.
Yes. White Walkers don't torture people. They just end you.
They're not going to do something tricky.
Yeah.
They're just going to come at you and attack you. The wildlings too. Hey, Tormund was baffled at this strategic planning. You know what I mean? He's like, on the side, so we don't what? The flanks? Okay, that's whatever. Sounds good, guys. I just want to run straight forward and attack. You know what I mean? Like, that's all that Jon has faced so far. Just enemies that run straight forward and attack. But Sansa has faced cruel, conniving enemies.
Yes.
And she's trying to warn Jon that you're gonna fall into some trick. You're gonna fall into some trap. Rickon's dead. It's hard to swallow. She didn't want to say it. Jon didn't want to believe it, but they just can't. Part of this plan can't be save Rickon. You know,
it's just not. Yeah, that's just not even worth taking into consideration saving Rickon, because it's just like it's fool's gold. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Sure enough, didn't happen, and I kind of get it, because Jon's, you know, I kind of get what he's going through in his head. You know, not like I can get it in terms of like, I've been through that
I
sort
remember
of thing
when my
before.
younger brother was kidnapped. And
But, you know, he's just, and this gets into what we were talking about with Jon sort of being a little fatalistic here. You know, he wanted to, first of all, when he's brought back, he just wants to run off and be by himself and just, you know, he just wants to escape. You know, he just can't, it's what he's been through is so rough. His people turned against him. He's experienced death. It's horrible. And he's been, you know, it's subtle, but he's been different this season. You know, he doesn't have any, he never had a lot of passion and energy, but he had his moments where he was like, you know, intense. And the only time it comes up here is when he's arguing with Sansa about but he's basically arguing that this is what we have. Like, this is what we're faced with. This is what we got to do. We don't have any other options. And Sansa's like, yeah, we do. Of course, part of that's her fault for not telling him about the Vale Knights. But we'll get into that in a minute. That's been something that's been going on for several episodes. But still, Jon is just, with the information he has, he's just like, yeah, if we die, we die. He's just very fatalistic. It's almost like he's welcoming the thought of being dead. He's not afraid of it. He almost welcomes it. And
you think that maybe Jon knows something?
Jon knows nothing. And you know that explains to me why, even though he knew that Ramsay was trying to trick him, trying to get him or get a reaction out of him, it still worked, because he's got a temper, and he's kind of expecting to die, and he's not afraid of it, and he kind of wants the release of death. He hates that he knows what his life is going to be, even if he wins this battle, which is facing the armies of the undead. It's not going to get better. You know, it's like, well, we get rid of Ramsay and we still have to face that. Like, I was happier being dead.
I just want to take a nap.
And he tells Melisandre, like, he's like, don't bring me back. Like, don't bring me back. I don't want to come back to this, you know? And it just, all of that, just that undertone of just like, he's fine being dead.
So you remind me of another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit. Melisandre has a little shift also.
Yes, right? She's different. Yeah.
She definitely is still committed to the cause, but she's a little bit more reasonable. She's at least making an attempt to offer explanation. She's not just like mystic and, you know, blindly confident.
She doesn't love the Lord of Light anymore. She's like, well, he's in charge. We don't have to love it.
Okay, if he didn't bring you back, like I can't bring you back. He did it.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
And if he wants me to bring you back again, I got to do it. Like,
yeah.
He's in charge.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
She's not like, oh, the Lord of Light, his will is the good, you know, his goodness and power. You know, it's a much different tone. Yeah, she's more pragmatic. She's still a believer. She's still working.
She's still a believer, but a little bit more practical about it.
Yeah, and she's more like resigned to it rather than like, this is the glory of our God. It's like, this is God, man. He's brutal.
Yeah, I can imagine she may come around with a little more confidence, because one of the last moments we see with her as the Stark banner unfolds, she looks on with this sort of like, I don't know quite what to describe it as, maybe satisfaction. I almost want to say pride, but I don't think she's necessarily taking credit for all this, but I think she's like relieved that the vision came true, that she's like, okay, I'm not crazy. It's not on my mind. I didn't make this up. I really did see myself in this moment.
That's a good point. This may restore some of her confidence. Yeah. I mean, she still seems to have a good bit of confidence. She had so much in the first place, but now it has been shaken. It isn't 100% anymore. It used to be arguably more than 100%. It was she had room to spare. She could take a few hits to her faith and it wouldn't really matter. But now she's taken a lot of hits to her faith, and it's still strong, but it's not ironclad anymore. It's not Stannis-like.
Like imagine she's been at this moment with a pending battle before.
Yeah.
And it didn't pan out. So here she is at this moment, the pending battle again. And she's like, well, John, I don't know, man. Lorelai does what he wants. I guess I gotta. But then the battle's over and they won. And she's like, all right, I'm back.
Yeah.
This is it.
And she's walking the walls of Winterfell, just like she said she would. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be a really important thing for episode 10. I'm very curious what they do with it because I really don't know what they're going to do about it at all. I'm very. I think that there's a lot of things, different ways they could go with it. So,
her character had kind of been put on the back burner until now.
Burner.
I imagine she might reemerge as a little more key of a leader. You know what I mean? Now.
Yes, and it's what her role will be. Like, what is her role? Going forward, if she's part of this effort to fight the White Walkers, I could see her being valuable in that. But she's going to have to maybe make her case for what her value is, especially if Davos is going to come after her with this Shireen accusation, which we all know she's totally guilty of.
She may have more vision. She may have insight to give. She may be accepted as an advisor.
Yeah.
Similar to how
some of her visions came true. You're right.
Yeah.
And she said them in advance and they came true. So, yeah.
In the middle of the battle, Tyrion's like, we should do this. And the general is like, no, political advisor. I got this battle stuff. In the middle of the battle, Melisandre doesn't even go to the council meeting.
Yeah.
When the battle's over, she's like, now, this is what we need to do politically.
Now that we're back on campaign, I got some political advice and some spiritual advice, as it were. So that's all going to be, I'm very curious how that's going to go. And so let's talk about a few other things. Davos, another thing with Davos was like I was leading up to there, they punned the hell out of us. And we saw this coming. We predicted this, that he would find the pyre. There were some trailer spoilers to give that away in advance, which we talked about in our end of after credits trailer discussion in past episodes. We had predicted this or something close to it. Now, but what they added, a neat little piece of detail, I thought. This was caught by, I don't have it in my notes. One of our observant watchers pointed out that the stag was missing an antler, which is a throwback to episode 1 where they find the wolves, where the stag and the direwolf, the female direwolf, has been killed by an antler in its neck and the antler is broken off, which I think is a nice little catch. But the pun that they made was think back to when Jon confronts the Watch and they have their showdown. The episode spoilers on IMDb and other places said, the Watch stands behind Thorne. Before the episode, they literally stood behind him. They didn't back him. They stood behind him when things went down. They dropped their weapons and stood behind Thorne. They didn't. So it was a pun. It was a little play on words there. And the exact same thing happened this time. And I caught it. Was like, I wish I had caught it ahead of time. I didn't mention it in either of these episodes. I told one of our Wednesday reviewers, Yoke Boy, about it. I was like, the line is, Davos loses something dear to him. Something dear to him. It wasn't written DEER, but that's the pun. He lost something dear to him. Shireen, the little deer. It's because she's a little deer, because Baratheon stag. Like, no, you punsters. That was pretty good. So that's gonna be something. I mean, I talked to our friend Tony Teflon, and he suggested that Davos would see the stag before the little deer sculpture carving before the battle, and he wouldn't have time to do anything about it, and it would fire him up during the battle. He would have some extra rage. It didn't actually seem to happen. He seemed pretty controlled. He was in control, and he seems to be holding his emotions in. He seems to be reserving them, but it's going to come up. I'm pretty sure. But so we thought maybe that would infect him, but it probably did. He was probably still feeling that, but it didn't maybe come up the way I thought it would. I thought it was a good suggestion, though. What are your thoughts on Davos's, what's his inner turmoil here and his just that scene? I thought throughout this episode, the music was fantastic. And in that scene moment too, it was really good pairing with his facial acting.
I can imagine, like a lot of times, this is like a more extreme in this Game of Thrones world when lives are at stake. But in your life, my life, there have been moments where you kind of knew something but you weren't really sure. You weren't sure enough to act on it, you know?
Yeah.
But then you find out, and you're like, and now it's like, now you like have to act on it because now you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you said, he doesn't necessarily have a moment yet. Like it's right on the cusp of this battle.
The horn blows like it's dawn when he
yeah.
finds it. Yeah.
So you can imagine as he's standing there, John's charging forward, the cavalry's charging forward, arrows are raining down. I'm sure his mind is not exactly settled. Like he's got this focus in front of him of this battle, but in the back of his mind, I'm sure he's also steaming over that. In the same way that Melisandre might have been uncertain about this. Davos has also been in this position where they're on the cusp of this battle. That's
an interesting point. Davos is the only guy who's been in the two biggest battles of the entire series, Blackwater and Battle of the Bastards, right?
Yeah.
The only one.
I think so, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Tyrion was sort of in the Battle of Fire but he wasn't really. He just stood there. he was a witness to it. He didn't really do any fighting. But he did do some fighting in Blackwater. So yeah, that's kind of cool. I never thought about that. Davos has seen the worst.
Was on the losing side one time, winning side one time.
That's true too, yeah.
So 2 out of 3, hopefully, against the zombies.
Yeah, we definitely want to see that. So let's take another short break. We'll take our mid-episode break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some more things. We got a lot more behind-the-scenes things to mention. We'll talk more about the battle itself, the way it played out, some of the standouts, some of the cool things we learned about the filming, and some of the aftermath as well. Plenty more to go, folks. Be right back.
I'll pick up the sticky note real quick.
Okay. So we have some cool things that we learned from the behind the scenes thing. Again, I highly recommend watching that. The shot where John has the Bolton horses charging right at him, where he kind of realizes his horse is shot out from under him. He kind of realizes his temper, his anger has gotten him killed. He doesn't end up being killed, as we all know well, but he kind of realizes it. He's kind of resigned to it. He stands up, he looks, and good facial acting in general from him in several spots, because there's not a lot of room for dialogue in battles when you're standing there on a horse by yourself and there's no one to talk to. Like, what is he going to do? Get all Tom Hanks and talk to his volleyball? There's not much room for that. So it has to be strong facial acting. Davos, great facial acting. Tormund, just even Rand, like all of them, just really strong facial acting. And John's, a couple of different ones really struck me. That one where he's resigned to his fate and where he's standing there, he pulls his sword. I thought taking his belt off was really cool. I thought it was really subtle. He's like, I'm never going to need to sheath this sword again. Yeah. This is it. He's really resigned to it. It speaks to how ready he is to die. And he says his life sucks. He hates it. He's like, it's like he's driven by duty and revenge in some ways and anger, but he doesn't have any joy, hardly any love in his life at all. And he just saw his brother get killed. It's just worse. I mean, things are just getting worse. And he doesn't expect to win. He doesn't expect this battle to go well. He's just like, yeah, well, what was I expecting to happen? I'm going to die. And so here's the thing real quick. The shot where he's holding his sword out and the horses are coming at him, that was real. That is not CGI. There were actually 40 horses charging at Kit Harington. Real horses. And in the behind the scenes, Kit's like, I'm a little annoyed because people are going to think that's CGI. That was real. It was scary. It's like, that was really so good acting there, because he didn't look scared. He looked ready for it. I mean, even though you just see him from behind, you didn't have that like, holy crap, these horses are trying. That's visceral. I mean, you got to like reality, because those actors could screw up. Someone could make a mistake. Someone could run him over. Like, he could really get trampled. So like, it almost makes the acting easier because he's going to be legitimately scared. It
was an awesome shot too. Like, cinematically, there were a lot of awesome shots. So
yeah,
I really think I want to give him a lot of credit, because I was borderline dreading this episode, because there have been a couple things this season already I felt myself kind of rolling my eyes at, having a hard time believing. And action stuff is usually pretty bad. They did a pretty good job with the Tower of Joy scene. They've done a lot of good things. But I just thought this whole big extended action battle, like, I want character drama. I don't care about action. Action is usually done poorly, and this is going to be a big one. And I was impressed. It was really good. I have minimal complaints, and I was on the edge of my seat, and it was visually stunning and impressive. And I have all kinds of positive accolades I want to give to it. And like maybe my biggest complaint would probably be that I feel like Jon only lives through this battle through luck. You know what I mean? Like, despite however much skill he has and determination, maybe destiny is the real reason. You know what I mean? But just
sure,
arrows raining down.
Melisandre might actually point that out. They may use this to be like, look, you shouldn't have survived that battle, but you did. Lord of Light, blah blah blah. Whether true or not, she could seize on that. That's kind of interesting. I never didn't think about that. It's a good point. They could use that luck, which it was. He was lucky. Even the showrunners admitted it's like, yeah, part of the main reason Jon survived is he was lucky. And that's fair. Like he was. Like
there's not some special skill that keeps the arrows from not raining down on you.
Yeah.
So maybe he had a certain amount of skill with this sword and his peripheral vision and choosing the best opponent to go after and positioning himself and having developed endurance and everything else. We've seen him. I think in a lot of ways, I think Game of Thrones is just like the ultimate D&D adventure, and he's just leveled up a bunch of times. You know what I mean? And but still, arrows raining through the sky are just going to kill you if they hit you. And you saw several people just kind of randomly get killed in front of him. He starts to talk to a guy, and it's horse smashes just all over the place. He just as easily could have randomly been cut down. That would have been a lot less interesting.
Whoa, Jon's
anticlimactic.
How about that?
But it was very Saving Private Ryan-ish, the way we're kind of like put right in the midst of this. And it's really dark and gritty and scary and violent. And it's not like often is pointed out, it's not like this beautiful, heroic thing. You know what I mean? Like
dirty and bloody.
Jon doesn't come out of this being like, I'm such a badass swordsman. Jon comes out of this like, I'm lucky I didn't get killed. Like,
and he's like savagely beating Ramsay because he's just like, the director told him, you've lost your humanity at this point. You just want to kill this guy. You're a beast at this point. It's like, yeah, that came off. It came out that way.
Another thing they pointed out when I watched that scene and he's just wailing into Ramsay's face, in my mind, he's like gone berserk or whatever, beating this guy. And then suddenly he like catches Sansa in the corner of his eye. And I felt like that maybe he was like embarrassed for having lost control, or how brutal he is in front of all these other men, that he should be more, civilized, if you will. Like, and he kind of straightens himself up and stands off of him. But in the show, they point out that Jon's realization maybe is more that this isn't my kill.
This is her kill.
This is Sansa's
kill.
I can't be the one to kill him.
Yeah, I'm glad I predicted that. I didn't predict that Jon would yield the kill to Sansa, but I predicted that Sansa would get to pass the sentence and swing the sword, so to speak. So that's cool. Glad to be right every once in a while. But yeah, that was really powerful, and it comes just after Ramsay's killed 1-1 too, and 1-1 has this heroic. It's a little bit of a throwback to Hodor, just in a slight sense, like this.
Open the door.
Open the door instead of close the door, exactly. And he dies because of it. He dies just after succeeding in that goal, basically. And that was another prediction that we can't claim much credit for predicting the 1-1's death. Like everyone was predicting that, and we were all right.
He would be the number one target on the battlefield.
Yeah, and the budget of keeping him around too. It's just expensive to film the giant, and they've got so many more like White Walker dragon scenes coming up, with or without each other, just both of those things maybe on the screen. No Ghost, unfortunately. That was one thing people asked. Ghost wasn't in this episode, and I'm okay with Jon leaving Ghost behind because, I mean, he could have maybe helped, but like he would have just gotten killed. I'm glad he didn't participate. He would have charged with Jon. He's not gonna like, I'll wait back here for you, Jon. That's not how wolves and dogs work. But also, that's a CGI issue, like money. They already spent an insane amount of money on this. Like the wolves, at least that's the good side. The fact that Ghost wasn't in the battle means he's still alive.
That is another thing I'll point out, by the way, just thinking about the production of that scene. Think about some of those shots of like the horse riding, like a camera on Jon as that horse is riding.
Yeah.
that's not easy to film. That's not amateur stuff. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of equipment and personnel making those shots happen.
That's this big Jeep thing with like a long arm sticking off of it. And I'm sure they had some drones for the overhead shots because they had all those shots of the battle of the armies laid out beforehand. And yeah, just really, really amazing. The behind the scenes I keep saying it, but it's just really incredible seeing all the work that went into it.
Think of the effort that had to be put into just making all those shields.
Yeah, I mean? All those bolted shields. Yeah, just over and over. And all the pile of bodies. They talked about how much work went into that. They had to put shields and banners and armor on all these fake bodies. Obviously those weren't real people lying in a heap.
Oh, they weren't? Oh, that kind of spoils the whole realism for me now.
And some other things that are interesting about here, just random thoughts about the battle. A big question on the minds of so many people since before the season, because we saw shots of this before the season. Who was on those burning crosses? Well, it didn't turn out to be anybody. It just didn't matter. It was just
random people.
Yeah, random people. So, that didn't matter. That didn't turn out to matter. Maybe OSHA's corpse was on there somewhere. We thought people were worried it would be Ramsay or it would be Rickon, but
how can you say
didn't matter?
That,
Rickon's dead.
Burning lives matter. Giant lives matter.
So
the budget shouldn't be a factor.
So let's see. What else do we have? I really liked Jon's facial expression when Rickon dies. It's not rage. It's resignment. He just looks kind of like he looks kind of dead. Like he just has this dead look in his cold dead look in his eye. Like that is it. All my humanity is gone now. I'm gonna charge you and die in the process. So, yeah. So that's what are some other moments? We're kind of just picking out random things that we liked, and
let's see. There was that's someone we already talked about. I definitely like the idea of that scene when Melisandre's kind of looking on with sort of satisfaction. Davos is looking on with frustration. When they had the castle there.
Yeah.
I thought it was. I thought Ramsay got off easy. That's one thing I want to say. I think he got off easy. This might be another thing that we've talked about before. I feel like we got another little hint there when Ramsay tells Sansa, "I'm part of you now." I wonder if that's a hint to the idea that she's pregnant. I don't know what the timing is. We know Sansa and Theon were together at a certain point, and since then, Theon has gotten all the way over to Marine.
Yeah,
right?
So with the King's Moon in between, he went all the way to Iron Islands and all the way to Marine. I'm very dubious of the pregnancy idea. I can't eliminate it because of the timeline, but the show isn't strong on timelines.
They could play with time, and even if it has been weeks or months, Sansa's kind of garbed up in all this form disguising gear. And if she cannot tell Jon about Littlefinger's army, she can also not tell anyone about a pregnancy. You can imagine how she might be embarrassed or ashamed or uncertain about what to do as far as that goes.
That's true.
And in the past, I kind of wrote that off because I thought they didn't really have time to deal with it. But I believe they're going to have 2 more seasons.
2 more seasons,
so maybe that is enough time to deal with it.
It's possible. It is. It's possible. We'll have to see. Maybe there'll be a clue next episode or something along those lines. Only so much more time can pass before the window on that closes, if it hasn't already. I kind of feel like it should have been closed already, but given the way they play with time, it seems silly to look at the way they play with time and to say, yes, too much time has passed. So you can't say that. Like Gilly's baby is the most obvious thing. You'd be like, wait, this kid has been a kid for like 4 seasons. I mean, what do you mean this too much time has passed? So, and that would be interesting. And this is also a good segue to talk about Sansa. First of all, why doesn't she reveal that the Vale Knights are coming? There's a couple of reasons, I think, and these are all. It's not like, okay, we all agree she should have told him. I mean, as far as being, having all the information we do and wanting the Starks to get along the way they do, she should, quote unquote, should have said something. But it doesn't, what she should have done ignores what's going on in her head and the person she is and what she's been through. And look at what her life experience has been. Her honorable, noble father does the right thing, gets killed. Sure, it's partly her fault for spilling the beans to Cersei, but Ned's plan was dumb in the first place. I mean, it was honorable, it was noble, but it was doomed to fail. We all know that, especially in retrospect, knowing Cersei. Then she's, she gets out of the clutches of Joffrey, a horrible person. She learns from Cersei. Cersei's trying to teach her how to be a queen, like teaching her to basically to be ruthless. Then she goes to Littlefinger and Ramsay, and it's just, she sees Roose Bolton, she sees Ramsay Bolton, she's tortured by Ramsay, and then she sees Littlefinger playing his game still, with the veil and everything. This is the world she's exposed to. How is she supposed to? And she never interacted with Jon a lot as a kid. They didn't know each other that well. That was made clear when they were reunited, that they didn't even know each other that well. How is she supposed to? So it makes sense from a human point of view that she would have major, major trust issues. Plus, we should not assume that Sansa's just this, because she's, a young, coming out of naivete girl who's good looking. We shouldn't assume she's just 100% good and pure. She might have some darker motives, and if she does, well, look who she's been around. Look who her influences are. This is the world she's been exposed to. You can't blame her for being, having lack of trust and not being able to, even with her own family. So
it's worth noting, Jon doesn't exactly trust her either.
Totally, right? Good point.
They had this battle plan, and no one asked her anything. And after the fact, she's like, "Hey, I might know something here." And he's like, "Okay, what do you think?"
Yeah,
you're a dumb girl. You don't know how to. We're just attacking. I don't care what you say. He's not exactly like trusting her either.
It's a good point.
Not that he necessarily should either. What you think about Jon's life experience? It's not like he's had all these strong female leaders showing him the way.
Yeah, and Sansa admits that she doesn't know much about battles, and this is a battle. He's like, "Look, this is my area of expertise," but she's arguing, but there's psychology involved here, and that's where I have insight. And they both had a point. He should have listened to her more, and she should have told him about the Veil Knights.
Here's another reason maybe she wouldn't tell him is that she doesn't really know. She sent a letter to Littlefinger. Did he get the letter? Did he respond back? Are they going to be here tomorrow in 3 weeks? Can't come after all? She doesn't really know. She tells Jon, "Oh, by the way, the Veil's coming." How do you know? I sent a letter. To who? When did you send the letter? Did you get message back? Yeah. When are they going to be here? It's not like that's the magic answer. You know what I mean? She doesn't know if or when they're coming,
Yeah, it's a good point.
If she knew they were going to be there today at 3 o'clock, well, then she should. How could she possibly know that? You know what I mean? So even if Jon believed her and they had a window of when he might be there, I believe you. Littlefinger's coming with the force that matters, and we'll be here within a week. Okay, now what do we do? Just sit around and wait for a week just because Sansa said
maybe Littlefinger's
coming? Who's this Littlefinger guy? Isn't he someone we shouldn't trust? You know what I mean? It's not like. I do feel like she should have told, but it's not like that's just this magic answer that solves everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I want to point something out. By the way, I saw a lot of parallels to the Lord of the Rings, to the Return of the King. You remember in Return of the King, Aragorn has got all the armies amassed to fight the monsters, right? And they're worried they're not going to be able to do it. And so he decides he's going to go off and get this undead army to help. Now, he's the king, and they've kind of built him up to be like not living up to his potential. Like, you're just this hunter in the woods. You should be the king that leads everyone. You know what I mean? And here's this moment. All the armies are amassed. He leaves in the middle of the night, doesn't tell anyone where he's going. And they even bother all the other leaders, have a meeting, and they're like, "Where'd the king go? What was he thinking?" That meeting could have been Aragorn giving instruction. "Hey, make sure the archers are on the left. Get the horses fed. Don't charge till the sun's in their eyes," and all this stuff. But instead, he just leaves and doesn't tell anyone. Then, after who knows how many people have been killed in battle, he shows up with this army that just sweeps through,
slaughters everyone.
What was the term Tormund used?
Pissing through into snow.
Yeah, piss through snow. Yeah, you know what I mean. And if Aragorn had just told everyone, like, wait till the last minute to attack, I'm going to have this army, then so many lives would have been saved. And so instead of him, they had this chance to show him be a good leader. Instead, he's specifically a bad leader and hordes of people are killed because of his poor communication. And I feel like the same thing was happening here. Like Sansa, they have this trump card to play, but they don't know what's coming. Huge numbers of people die, and then here comes the cavalry and just easily wins the battle. And like you feel like one didn't have to die. All those men just didn't have to die if they just could have communicated better. But as I said, I understand reasons why she wouldn't communicate. She, on some level, might not trust Jon. She might not know if the help is really coming. Even if they do, they don't know when it's coming or how much they can count on it. But it is on a certain level kind of frustrating. You kind of feel like you kind of want to blame Jon for charging forward, right? You feel like as much as Sansa should have told Jon about Littlefinger's army, Jon should not have charged forward to save Rickon.
Especially because he was warned about it.
Exactly. Sansa specifically. What's another thing Sansa should have done?
Yeah.
Warn Jon what Ramsay's like. She did. And he just specifically did not do. You understand why he didn't do it, though, because it's his brother. You understand the reason why. So you can
understand why he was overwhelmed. Like it's like if he was cool and calm and collected, he wouldn't do it. But you understand why he did it, because how can you be cool, calm, and collected
when your brother's being killed right in front of you?
And when you kind of expect to die anyway.
And it's part of why I want to give Ramsay credit for being intelligent and even a good leader. This is a very well coordinated battle that he had. You know what I mean? Like
it fell apart because of an entirely unexpected element that he maybe could have seen coming, but probably you shouldn't say he should have seen it coming. You know,
there's even other little subtle things about it. Like at the point once Jon has run forward. Once he charged forward on horse, try to get to Rickon. Yeah. And gets there and Rickon's dead. At that point, he almost, especially once Ramsay orders the archers to fire. One, Ramsay knows he's within range. Yeah. He knows the archers can reach that far. He's got Jon right where he wants him. You know what I mean?
It's funny that he didn't expect Jon to charge forward. Like, they shot at where he was, and instead of going backwards, he comes forward. So it's like the arrows went behind him.
Yeah, I almost think that Ramsay maybe could or should have thought that he would charge forward, because I think it was correct for Jon to do that. Yeah. Because once he's in the range of those arrows, trying to turn around, come back, he's more likely to get hit than if he just charges forward. Yeah. Now he charges forward and he's just totally on his own now, but at least he can like time the next battle, or the troops can come forward from behind, or all the other stuff that pretty much did happen can happen. Yeah. He's still in a terrible situation. He should have just stayed back, because again, that was even specifically part of their plan. Jon knew, dig trenches on the side so they can't flank us. Yeah. Well, they charge forward and now they can be flanked, and they get flanked, and they're just ruined because of it. And
they get surrounded, the double envelopment. They said they were aiming to do what was done at the Battle of Cannae, which is when Hannibal encircled the Roman force. The big difference there was it was a smaller force encircling a larger force. In fact, they alluded to that with Davos saying, if we let him charge our center and buckle on purpose, then we can surround him. That's exactly what Hannibal did at the Battle of Cannae. He led the center to keep the morale up, because he could not have the center collapsed completely. And then he knew the Romans the way they are, and they just forward, and they, superior numbers and envelop them. So that's the difference here, is that it was the superior force enveloping a smaller one, which is normally how it's done. They study Hannibal's envelopment at West Point still because it was so amazing. But it's cool that they kind of made some nods to it and then flat out mentioned it in the behind the episode discussion. And it was very similar. Like, the descriptions from historians of the Roman period described how it was just like this incredibly dark and just, violent scenario where these men they're packed in so tightly that they can't swing their swords. And it's just like hacking people to death, like killing these people because they're surrounded. They can't run away. Normally in ancient battles like that, one side breaks and runs and people are killed running away. But quite a few, we have 10,000 on 10,000. And a lot of times you don't even have 3,000 total die on both sides, because one side starts losing and they all run away. And, some cavalry will catch the fleeing infantry, but the fleeing infantry are usually going to escape the pursuing infantry, et cetera, et cetera. They get back to their castle. Whatever. There's all these reasons why most of the army will get away. Generally, in ancient battles, the whole army isn't destroyed. It's usually just a small part of it. So this is very different, and it's been talked about, like these crazy numbers out there on like the number of people dying per second at Cannae. And it would be the same kind of thing. It would be like people just dying all day long, hacking them down. Just their arms are pushed together. And so they're trying to capture that really just powerfully overwhelming thing that can happen in a real battle, where people are just so tight together and pressed up against each other, and you can hardly even swing your sword. And they showed that with the fight between Lord Umber and Tormund, where they're just like, they can't even like hardly pull their swords out. Yeah, like they're just so tightly packed. It's just like brutal and just it's really strong. It was really powerful. Just like when Jon is being trampled on, maybe it's a little unrealistic that he was actually able to stand up. Maybe it's unrealistic that he survived, but the music and just the way it was shot and his gasping for breath, it's just really powerful. Like, I really liked it. Yeah, that was a great thing to try to bring to life, the desperation of hand-to-hand combat.
And the gruesomeness of it, and the dead bodies all around. That's like a legit thing. And like all the people being killed don't just evaporate. They're laying on the ground in front of you and behind you and all around you. And it's
I think maybe they made the wall a little above bodies, maybe a little unrealistically high, but maybe not. I mean, there's accounts of things like that in the Civil War and some ancient battles where the piles of bodies are just literally that big, and they become either an obstacle or a benefit to, like, if they're piled in front of a
high
wall.
Ground on.
Yeah.
Which is what would happen, especially when there's also horses. There's start to be a couple horses and bodies over top of them, and there's people coming in either direction. Getting up on top to attack down is an advantage. And then once you do that, there's another dead body, you know, and it keeps, and eventually that guy who's on top gets hacked down or shot by an arrow, and it just gets taller and taller and becomes an actual barrier that you can have as part of your condensing wall
it's
around
like a
it.
meat grinder. I mean, like you said earlier, Ramsay just keeps firing arrows into it. They just like hitting friend and foe alike, and horses and everything. And it's just, whoa, just incredible. So yeah, really visceral, really, you know, if you're not the kind of person that responds to action and music, then I can understand why maybe you didn't like the episode a lot. But I particularly respond to music and action. I can go either way on action personally, but when they put this much effort into it, and you can tell, you know, the scenes where Jon is standing without a horse and there's just horses flying past him, those were real horses too. That wasn't CGI. They planned for these horses. Like, there was obviously CGI enhanced, but
most of that was like stuff in the background though. They had like 100 or whatever horses and soldiers and knights, and that's all like kind of in the forefront of the screen. And in the background they had, you know, 800 more or whatever. But when you see Jon with a sword and a horse and a guy, that was all real. Obviously, it was choreographed. I guess, I don't know, the stunt coordinator or the battle coordinator, whatever that guy's role was, he said something like, "We want you as an audience to feel like this is a dangerous situation. You could die at any moment. Anything can happen." But the guy said, as we film it, we don't want anything to happen. We don't want a dangerous situation. They had trainers and people that the horses were on routes. They had it coordinated right where Jon was supposed to stand, where the horses were supposed to run, and everything. But it was a lot of horses are big. I don't know if you've ever been on a horse.
Yeah, I have.
They're taller than you. Falling off a horse is dangerous. Like,
people break
Superman.
Their necks.
Yeah, like
Literally,
it's dangerous. It's really big and tall and high, and they move fast and they're strong and they're heavy and.
Theirs were some really well-trained horses, and they had horses that were trained to fall down and flip on their backs and roll around and act all like circus horse. I mean, this is really, really hard. I just can't say enough about how amazing it is to see the animals like used in that regard so well and so effectively, so believably, and just like the way they're like the lances splintering and people just flying out of the saddle. I mean, I'm just going on and on about it, but yeah, I just thought it was so cool.
All right, so I'm going to talk about a next step thing here.
Okay.
Littlefinger rides in, saves the day.
Yeah, this smarmy looking face.
Yeah. They've got Winterfell. They defeated Ramsay. Ostensibly, the next move is to like go fight zombies at the wall.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone immediately goes to the wall and just waits for the zombies to come, or if they want to make some offensive.
Big open question. Yeah.
But in the meantime, what's Ramsay doing? Is he like
Ramsay?
Sorry, not Ramsay. Littlefinger.
Ramsay's dead.
Yeah.
Littlefinger.
What's Littlefinger doing? Is Littlefinger just gonna like, going back home now, or hey, I'm gonna check up in King's Landing?
Well, he asked Cersei to be made Warden of the North if he beats the Boltons, and now he's beaten the Boltons, so I think he's gonna try to marry Sansa.
Well, is Cersei gonna do that? Sansa's supposed to be Cersei's prisoner.
Yeah, and Cersei isn't in power anymore, so it's like, who is, is Tommen gonna allow this? Is Tommen gonna like carry forward Cersei's orders, or No idea. Yeah, it's an open question. It's a good question.
How is Jon going to perceive? How is Jon going to receive Littlefinger? Is Jon going to think of him as the hero that just saved the day? Does he have a reason to think otherwise? Is Sansa going to have to tell Jon, no, you don't understand. Don't trust him. That's why I didn't tell you. You know, I wonder if Sansa will be on Littlefinger's side.
That's a good question.
Does Davos know about him?
John's interaction with Littlefinger. That's a very good question. I really don't know.
Something we've never got before.
No, right? We have not. Yes, and maybe, and it's like you said. I think you said it before. Maybe he knows the truth about John's parentage. It's possible, and that could be something he spills the beans on in order to make get advantage of some kind. He doesn't necessarily know. It just would be believable if he did. And yeah, I think we can understand the basic outline of his plan. How he's going to get from point A to point B or to point C, that's a little harder to figure. But I think he wants Winterfell. He wants Sansa. He wants the North. He wants to be, you know, recognized as a noble blood or whatever.
I think he's in great position. I feel like he still has an angle to be on everyone's side. Yeah. Like, I think he can justify. I kind of question, like, the idea of him trying to marry Sansa. Cersei might be like, wait a minute. How do you know where Sansa is? Bring her to me. That's what, you know. But I think he still might be able to spin it. He's like, look, I did X, Y, Z. You know, I think he could still, like, sell himself, play dumb and lie about where he was or when things happen and still be in with Cersei. But also it might not even matter if he's in with Cersei. She doesn't really have power anymore. It seems like he could or should still be aligned with Olenna. They don't think he's done anything to specifically betray her, and they both maybe have something to gain from each other's.
In fact, he promised her a young, you know, a handsome young man. And that's, remember when they had their conversation back in his ruined brothel? He's like, I've got a present for you. It's like, who is that? We still don't know who that is. And that was from last season.
I thought that was resolved. I thought it was oh,
you're right. It was Oliver.
Oliver.
Well, that's what people think it was. And it probably was Oliver, and that was what allowed, you know, this whole thing to go down. But that worked against Olenna. You know, like that was Oliver accusing Loras. You know,
it ended up working against her.
Yeah.
But
so there's been a theory for a while that maybe Littlefinger has Gendry stashed somewhere. You know, given what we said before about characters being gone for a long time and coming back, I don't know if I want Gendry to come back because then he'll just die. But well, there's all this talk about what if Tommen dies? Who is going to be king? You know, like, and there is no easy answer to that. You know, that's the question we get every once in a while. Like, what's the line of succession right now? My answer is always civil war, because there's no clear answer. Whenever there's no clear answer to who the king should be, it comes down to fighting. And right now, Westeros is just shredding itself. It's, you know, I don't think this one person's going to come along and be like, I am the new king. Well, we might have one person come along and be, I am the new queen. Yeah. That I could see happening with Daenerys, obviously. But as far as someone to be Tommen's heir, I got nothing. So Gendry, I mean, he is Baratheon blooded.
Here is a thought I started to develop on what might happen if Tommen got killed and or it was revealed that he was not legitimate. Right?
Yeah.
Is it the Sparrow may effectively seize control at that moment? He's got a lot of control right now. As long as he's got Tommen under his thumb, he's effectively in control.
Yeah.
So, but if that, I think he's forward thinking enough to have a backup plan. He's kind of played up this idea that the crown and the faith are the twin pillars and da-da-da.
Yeah.
And if in the past the faith was kind of put to the wayside and the crown got to rule, well, maybe in this moment of despair, the crown could be put to the side and the Sparrow can run things. You just imagine he could sell that to the people.
He can say, until such time as we, you know, and he'll just like let that time be long, you know, just
until he can find a way to pick who he wants or someone else
and rule through that person. Yeah.
It seems like he's got things the way he wants it now, but it seems like even if things fell out of control a little bit, he's still in a better position of power than pretty much anyone else.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's talk a little more about Sansa, and then because we can say a few more things about the Sparrow and what may be coming based on a few things we've seen in the trailers, and of course we don't want to spoil anyone on that. So let's talk a little more about Sansa and wrap up our regular episode discussion. We'll give you a chance in case you had some more points to make, Sean. But about Sansa, let's talk about the final scene there. She gets to do the killing blow indirectly by ordering. I assume that she ordered him put into the cage there, because first of all, the showrunners say Ramsay doesn't realize it's truly over for him until he wakes up in that room. And Sansa asks, "Where is he?" And you know, he's like, it's clear that he's just realized he's there. He hasn't been there for a while. So I think I'm pretty sure that Sansa ordered him put there, and then, you know, just gets to watch what happens. And it's a perversion in a sense of Northern justice. She's passing the sentence. She's not literally swinging the sword, although she's delivering the blow indirectly. And she looked into his eyes and heard his last words. But she's also vindictive about it and, you know, makes him suffer and smiles a little bit as she's walking away, which is hints at what we were talking about before. We cannot just assume that Sansa is this, upstanding princess type character. She's a real person, you know, as much as a character on TV can be. And she's got, considering who her influences are, she's going to have a little conniving in her too. Some cunning and some revenge.
I think even for an upstanding princess, Ramsay still got off easy. I still think that for an upstanding princess, more suffering still would have been understandable or justified or deserved or whatever.
It's not the Stark way, but it's understandable. After what she lived through.
I want to point out also a couple potential
lived through
bits of irony or questions I had. Because she tells him, your house will fade. What is the word?
Your house will disappear. Your words will disappear. Your house will be forgotten, or your house will end. You'll be forgotten, etc.
But I think she even said something like, your memory will be forgotten, or something like that. Which I question. So. I think Sansa's wrong about at least some aspects of that. Even if she's not pregnant with his child, he'll be the one to finish off the giants. You know, like that's there are many things that he'll go down in history for. You know, like he, as much as she wants to erase all memory of his existence, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the Bolton's mark has been made.
Yeah, maybe Theon won't forget either.
That's true. Yeah,
but the episode credits, or rather the episode intro, will change. There will the Bolton flag will no longer be seen on Winterfell. That blasphemous image that it is. We get to see the Stark banner restored. We didn't actually see the Bolton banners burning yet. Maybe we'll get to see that next episode. So what other thoughts you have before we move on to our trailer discussion? Anything else?
There's not another particular thing I can think of right now. I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as we're done recording.
Right on. Okay, well, folks, thank you for tuning in. If you are wanting to stay away from the trailer spoilers, then this is a good time for you to sign up, or at least you could wait till after our fun episode credits. Oh, Sean thought of something.
I did remember. I wonder if Jon and or Sansa or someone will ask Melisandre to bring Rickon back. That's at least a possibility, right? Like,
yeah, I guess it's possible. Yeah, like maybe Jon wouldn't wish that on somebody. Like, no, you don't want to go through coming back. It sucks, especially coming back to this. No, he would have to entertain the idea.
And I say it mostly as a joke, but on a certain level, he is the best heir to.
Like Sansa said it herself. People would accept it more than they would accept her or Jon himself.
Which does bring up another point that Bran is still out there, and I don't know if he even theoretically could or would want to be the heir. I don't know if his destiny is to get tied up in some tree roots.
Regardless of Bran, it causes a problem. Even if Bran is the heir, what comes after him? Because he can't have children. So you still have a problem with Bran. You still have to have an heir after Bran, even if Bran is the new Lord of Winterfell, because he can't breed. So
it's possible that these ancient families that Olenna pointed out, they might just be done. It's probably if Tommen dies, then that's the end of the Lannisters, the Starks, the Tyrells. Potentially, that's the direction things are going.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so let's do our credits, and then if you don't want to be spoiled, we'll see you next time for the final episode. We'll have a lot of fun with that. If you are a book reader and you're watching this, check us out on Thursday. Of course, we always do our Wednesday episodes, but we're doing a Q&A as well on Thursday, a live Q&A with the Radio Westeros team. So check that out. We've got a Google event page up for it. You can ask questions and we will answer them. So if that's the case and you don't want to be trailer spoiled, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in for the final episode. If not, stay tuned and we will cover our trailer spoilers after this. And first of all, a quick break and I'll come back with our credits. All right. Thanks to our History of Westeros bards, those who make the music for our episode. That is Joey Townsend and Jesse Koval. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm a big fan of music in general, and I think music adds a lot to any form of entertainment. This episode in Crit music was really good. I'll say that again. I've already said it once or twice.
Music really pisses me off.
So thanks to our Patreon supporters. First Lord Cash Craig is Hand of the King, Lord of Mines, Lord of Makers, and the Black Pupil. Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog is Warden of the West. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning is Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Lord John Reed of Castle Woodbridge is the Lord Borealis, the Light of the North, and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. We have Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers, and Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is Cinder of the Citadel. We have Lord Robert Jacobs, the Master of Coin. We have Rosie the Clever, Master of Laws. Lord James Tuttle, Master of Ships. We also have Lady Direliz of Castle Naki, the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Velt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Cabethia and Frozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Mary Meg is Lady of the Bloody Stepstones. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of the Desert Rose. Geoffrey the Unflinching is Lord of Sand Lake. Lord Grey Bay of the Queen City. We also have Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate, Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garen de Haviland of Devil's Hand Keep. Lord Brandon Slate, the North's Hammer and Harbinger of the Old Gods. Lady Brame is Light of Winter's Garden and Beacon of the Northwest. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye and Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. Lady Cachan Volant is of Swine Harbor. Lord Baron of Hillcrest is Lord of the Halls and wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. And Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Donhold. I neglected to mention at the beginning of this episode, our first sword, Jeff Gnarly the Long Snapper. Sorry, Jeff, you belonged at the beginning there, as well as the great, soon-to-be great dragon Mazalacartho, ridden by Lord Mark Joseph the Snow in Winterfell. Let me tell you, as young as that dragon is, it definitely would have made a difference, saved a few northern lives. If they had this in the Battle of Winterfell just now, Ramsay would have faced a bigger challenge if he had a dragon like Dany did, for sure. And also thanks to King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate, who would have loved to have been the one to execute Ramsay himself, but alas, I believe he even sees the fairness of Sansa getting to do it. Also thanks to Lord Commander Dubbington, the Red Bear, as well as the rest of our Patreon supporters, including the History of Westeros Night's Watch, led by Lord Commander George the Golden, First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of the Green Shield, and First Steward Dolorous Roanoke Cantrell, wielder of the Valyrian Spoon, for the night is dark and full of turnips. And Dolorous Roanoke had a question for you, Sean. The question is, if it's a what if question. If Roose had killed Ramsay rather than the other way around, do you think maybe he would have come out ahead in this whole situation? Do you think he would have maybe been more cautious about outside help arriving, or perhaps not played with Jon as much, or maybe just done something in general differently? Is there enough? Do you know enough about Roose's personality to say that he feel confident that he would have done something differently?
Yeah, I think so. I think he would have done, I don't know how significantly differently, because I can imagine Roose might have not even fought Jon. I can imagine Roose saying, like, look, I'm not giving up Winterfell, but I know you need help. I'll send my troops to fight at the wall against the zombies. I can imagine that.
He could have played some politics that way. Be like, how can you stand against me when I'm assisting you? You know?
Yeah. I think for sure he doesn't go meet Jon on the battlefield. He just stays in a castle and waits for Jon to come to him. He said that's what he's going to do. Like, I think it's definitely a thing he does.
Yeah, they were talking about how Ramsay won't do that because he wants to strength and, doesn't want the North to see him as weak. Roose might find other ways to show his strength and just still stay in his castle.
One way to show your strength is to not lose the battle. That's one way to show your strength, right? Like,
that's pretty strong, not losing.
And not have all these men killed, all these allied houses come into your banner,
Roose may
getting slaughtered in a battlefield by your own arrow fire. Like, I think Roose
I could see him doing that, but I wouldn't assume that he would.
And I think for sure, almost for sure, he doesn't get taken off guard by Littlefinger like that. Roose seems to do a little bit more politicking around in the first place. He's more like aware of the goings-on of the kingdom. Ramsay's almost oblivious to it seems. And additionally, even Jaime points out when they come up to the phrase at River Run.
Yeah.
Jaime says, we just walked in here with 4,000 or however many troops. You don't have any kind of perimeter set up to let you know we're coming. What if we were bad guys? Roose would be as smart as Jaime as far as that goes. Roose would have had a perimeter set up and scouts to be aware of an approaching army. So
I agree. I think he would have handled it better as well. He's more experienced, and he's also less moved by his emotions. They're both. Ramsay's a psychopath of sorts, and Roose was more of a sociopath. You know, if to use my own armchair psychology, I'm not sure if those definitions fit perfectly, but that's how I see it. You know,
I understand your meaning for sure.
Yeah. So, in other words, Roose isn't like trying to think of. He doesn't care about making his enemies suffer along the way. He'll do it to send a message. He'll do it for a result, but he won't do it just because he wants them to suffer, because he gets pleasure out of that. Whereas Ramsay does. Ramsay could tell Ramsay was enjoying making Jon squirm. Roose wouldn't have cared about that. He may have done something similar with Rickon, just to not shooting him at a distance. He wouldn't have done something as, like that, but he may have brought him out and killed him in front of Jon to throw him off a bit. He might have done something like that, something a little more.
Again, ruthless. I want to give Ramsay credit for doing some clever things.
Yeah.
But I still think that Roose would have been more successful in the end.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about the credit stuff. There's definitely there's a shot of Jon kissing Sansa on the forehead and saying, we have to trust each other. We have so many enemies now. And it's interesting. Two parts of that are interesting. One, so this is probably them talking about why Sansa didn't tell him some things and maybe why Jon didn't tell her some things. And also maybe setting up some conflict between them. Maybe that is what we're heading toward. Maybe they won't work it out. Maybe they won't be able to trust each other. That's a possibility. But the other thing is
she's telling him that she's pregnant with Ramsay's kid.
Maybe. And the whole idea of, but him saying we have so many enemies now. I was like, well, don't they actually have less enemies than they had before? Are some of these northern houses going to still be out to get them because they sided with the Boltons and lost? Are they still, are they going to be pardoned? What's going to happen? Like, we don't even know what happened to Lord Karstark. Lord Umber is dead. So new blood his son or whoever takes over there could be like, I wasn't behind that decision. I'm with you guys.
Sansa might be warning Jon that Littlefinger is actually an enemy.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's like, look, he saved us and we might be able to use his forces, but I'm telling you, we can't trust him.
Yeah.
And that might be a person, that might be why Jon would say we have so many enemies. Even people who seem like allies are enemies. Okay, well, we really have to trust each other if you're telling me I can't trust this guy. Right?
Yeah. Also, I noticed that, speaking of Sansa and trust, at the end of the scene where she's letting Ramsay be killed by his dogs, it starts snowing. And the episode basically ends with snow just falling. There had been a little bit of snow before that, but I thought it was neat that they had specifically aimed to have snowfall right then in that moment, right as she's walking away with that kind of semi-smile on her face, which is kind of dark in its own way. But then what we see we see Sansa in front of the heart tree, which is presumably the Winterfell heart tree, and there's some snow there, and Littlefinger is saying, or Sansa says, "What do you want?" And Littlefinger says, "I thought you knew what I wanted." And I think we all know that he wants to marry her, and that's, his path to unite, just like Ramsay had to marry Sansa to truly take the North because she's Stark. Littlefinger is aware of that same idea, and he's now the heroic savior, and he's engineered it pretty well, but the fly in his ointment. The problem here is that Sansa hates him now. And she may see the political necessity. She may be kind of forced into it, but if there's a way out of it for her, she's going to take it. She does not want to marry Littlefinger, and I don't blame her. So, do you have any predictions with that? Do you think
she might hate him a little less now that Ramsay's gone and she got to be the one to kill him, and Littlefinger helped make that happen by coming in?
It's possible.
I'm not going to say that she wants to marry him, but she might not actively hate him. You can imagine she went through a phase of actively hating him, and maybe she still is and always will, but I think it's at least possible that she is.
She's certainly not going to trust him. If she's having trouble trusting Jon, she's certainly not going to trust Littlefinger. She probably doesn't have a lot of trust for people in general right now. She may have to relearn some of that, finding some people that, she may have to have some interactions with people that are trustworthy in the long term.
In a way, though, I feel like we talked about this before, the idea of trust. a meaning of trust being knowing what to expect from someone, even if you don't like them or you wouldn't
just
trust
like
them with
Tyrion,
your money. But
Tyrion said it with the slavers. Like
she, on a certain level, she might actually trust Littlefinger more than John.
She understands his motivations.
Right. She doesn't, not quite sure what or why John's going to do things, but she does know she does know what to expect from Littlefinger.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Even if it's not good things, even if it's greedy things or manipulative things, she knows to expect greedy, manipulative things from Littlefinger. She can at least, whatever his plan is, she will know to consider what his motivations are, what the ramifications might be, how she might be getting manipulated in it. But if John has some plan, even if it's a honest plan, if you will, right?
Yeah.
She still doesn't necessarily trust that John has thought it through or knows what the ramifications will be, or if he's right about what his plan is.
The Ramsey-fications.
Et cetera.
Yeah. So let's see, what else do we have? We have a shot of Bran. There's no dialogue or anything, just a shot of him kind of sitting there. So we're definitely getting at least a scene with Bran. We get a little, see what's happening there. Maybe some follow-up. Maybe they try to head south. We see Benjen and Mira again, I would assume. So there's really not much to say there other than I'm excited to see what they do with that. We see the Freys and Lannisters together. We see Jaime sitting in Lord Walder's hall as they're celebrating. And Walder's saying, the Freys and Lannisters send their regards. And it's a popular idea that Arya is in this room in disguise because there is some behind-the-scenes clues that Arya will have at least one more scene this season, and that would be a place for her to turn up. We don't know where. There's plenty of places she could turn up. She could turn up at the Citadel. She could turn up at King's Landing. I hope not, because King's Landing looks like it's going to be having some problems with wildfire, potentially. And the Riverlands is the other main possibility. The North is a possibility, too. I mean, she says she's going home, but it's hard to just take ship directly to the North. It's not impossible. We've seen it happen. So there's a lot. We can't predict where Arya will go exactly, but I think the Riverlands is a strong possibility. And if so, maybe she even gets to kill Lord Walder just this quickly. I kind of doubt it that it would happen this quickly, but that'd be something.
I was surprised to see Jaime there at the Twins because I thought for sure he was heading back to King's Landing.
Yep.
I guess maybe they need to have a meeting back there first just to resolve the battle or report in what happened or something.
But a little politicking before heading home.
But there is something I was curious about. The Lannisters and the Freys send their regards. To who?
Good question. It's a very good question. You wonder if there's some sort of wedding going on here, or there's some sort of other connection between Lannister and Frey. Why are they talking like they're maybe that's just Walder expressing that he's glad to have Lannisters as an ally, and he's making them seem closer than they are. But maybe there's some sort of, I don't know who would get married. Jaime was marrying one of Frey. That doesn't seem very likely. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a little. You would expect Jaime to rush back to King's Landing as soon as possible. And that in itself is maybe a bit of a spoiler. If this wildfire thing comes down in a certain way, you almost expect that Jaime will either be there to stop Cersei from doing it, or that he will come back to King's Landing after it's been done, and this will drive a wedge between him and Cersei. Because maybe the most extreme possibility is Cersei accidentally killing Tommen herself with this wildfire thing. And then Jaime might. That of all, of anything is going to make Jaime turn against Cersei, it would be something like that.
Yeah, especially like, what I did to stop this city from being burned to the ground, and now you burn it to the ground.
What a kick to the pants that would be if Jaime stops the Mad King, and it ruins his reputation for life in doing so. Saving King's Landing ruins his reputation forever. And then his own sister goes and does it. Yeah, like the one person he cares about most in this world, the person that's like, it's just me and you. That's it. Me and you against the world. And then she goes and does that. That would just be, man, yeah, that would be rough. Very rough for him, to put it mildly. So that's a good segue to talk about King's Landing. We see shots of the 7 judges sitting on their 7-pointed star inside the Great Sept. Looks like it's going to be cinematic. And you've got Cersei sitting there. There's a shot of Cersei kind of gazing out the window. And we've Loras. Looks like there's Loras's trial is happening first, maybe, because there's him like kneeling and, are you ready to accept, whatever it is they say, whether he's going to accept judgment or accept repentance. Don't know how that's going to play out, but it's very interesting. So a lot to expect there. Marjorie, we see Marjorie getting prepared, in some way. We see Tommen having the crown put on his head, which is maybe the crown. The faith is kind of confirming his reign. You know, like they're saying, yes, we're confirming you as the king, and maybe his official coronation. I'm kind of puzzled by that. I'm not sure what's going on there, but someone's crowning Tommen. I mean, we already know he's the king. I'm not clear on what that means. Maybe they're deciding he's come of age and he can rule on his own now. I really don't know what's happening there, but it's interesting. It seems like a really simple thing, just him putting the crown on his head. But I think there's more to it than that. I think it's actually very telling. But I can't really pin it down. I can just see a lot of possibilities. Also,
you know,
go ahead.
I had a thought. This isn't necessarily connected to the trailer bits, but just something I was starting to consider is what if they make another play with the army? You know what I mean? Like if Olenna has the troops marching with Mace and tells Kevin, or Kevin would want to save Cersei from her trial. If they're willing to march the troops in once, they might be willing to do it again. But it might be tougher now that the crown is on the side of, now that Tommen and the forces that be. But what if they're not? What if Kevin? I wonder if Kevin would play ball with Olenna, because you remember that was like an appeal that was made to Kevin. You want your son back, don't you? Remember?
Yeah,
and
he
Kevin,
still does.
Right. Lancel is still part of this faith militant. I wonder if Kevin would play along for the moment, but might coordinate behind the scenes with Olenna for some sort of a coup.
Interesting.
I don't know how likely that is, but I just considering if it's a possibility that Olenna was riding Kevin.
That's a good suggestion, yeah. Well, speaking of Olenna, we have, this is not from the trailers. This is actually a interview type, behind the scenes type spoiler, and that is that we will be getting a Varys scene next episode, and it will involve the Queen of Thorns.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and it may involve Ilaria as well. There may be a Dorne Reach alliance happening as Varys tries to get them on Dany's side ahead of time. That's my best guess. And we're also going to see from the same spoiler, not the same exact source, but the same type of source. We know we're going to see Sam next episode. There's a scene of him talking to a maester or something. So we're going to get some resolution on that, some movement on that plot. We get to see what happens, whether he's going to just try to get in and out of Old Town as fast as possible because he knows his father's coming for him, or his brother or his brother. So that's cool. We get to see what happens there. And we know there'll be more Dany. Dany shots. Dany and Dario having an intimate moment. Interesting we wonder how much longer Dany's affair with Dario can go on, because eventually she's gonna have to take like a noble-blooded king husband, you'd think. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but queens don't rule without kings, and kings don't really rule without queens unless they have already fathered heirs. So that's gonna come up. Maybe not for a while, but it's gonna come up. So I don't know what the plotting is amounting to. If they're going to make promises like, hey, Olenna might be like, hey, marry your dragon queen to Loras or something like that. That we'll agree to that. Something along those lines. But at the time when Olenna left King's Landing, I thought it was really interesting because not only they didn't kill her off. It's like it was cleverly done in the way the High Sparrow got her to leave, by dropping the hint with Marjorie and her picking it up. But it also meant that maybe she has another role to play. She's not just being sent off to just fade into nothing. She's still the ruler of that house, basically. Kind of, like not the Mace is the de facto leader of the house, but we know who's really running
things. She's the effective leader.
Yeah. So it would make sense that Varys would know who to talk to.
Yeah.
Varys would understand who the real power there is. Who wears the pants in that family? So I'm very curious to see how that goes. And so I guess maybe we'll see Ilaria. That'll be interesting to see her again. As much as the Dorne plot doesn't make people excited, it's never too late. It's never too late to stop having a bad plot and to start having a good plot. Just it's Beric and Septon Ray talking to the Dornish plot. y'all can make your plot line good still. You can't make up for what you've done, but it can be good going from here on.
There's
right?
more good to be done than bad.
So we'll have to see how that goes.
So we get one quick image of Bran.
One quick image of Bran. I don't know what that's going to mean.
No context or anything else, but just that he'll be in it. Maybe we'll get a vision.
Hopefully get some walkers, or maybe we'll get a vision. We know that there is likely to be some sort of resolution to Jon's parentage, or at least moving forward on that. Well, let's see more about it. partly from the flashback that Bran sees, where he sees the quick image of what appears to be a dead body and what appears to be young Ned's arm near it with blood and everything, which would be Lyanna, giving birth, maybe. It's our best guess. So yeah, that all makes sense that Bran would have at least one more vision, because we got to see that. And we've just had, this could change Jon, although I don't think he's going to find out yet. I think it's going to be a reveal to the audience, and then it's going to be like, whoa, how's Jon going to learn about this? What's it going to mean to him when he does learn about it? Assuming he finds out, which seems likely. And yeah, how will it go from there? That's all really big open question. Do you have any predictions there? I
mean, it could be revealed to the audience through Bran, and also revealed to Jon through Littlefinger.
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
That's true. It could happen simultaneously. So there's a lot of possibilities for how that could go. I think that covers it. I think we mentioned actually, there's one other thing in the trailer, and that's just somebody walking out like from the shadows out into King's Landing. I've been watching that again. I'm almost positive it's Lancel, but I can't be 100% sure. It doesn't look like Loras to me. The hair is too long. It's a short hair, and it looks like a black roby thing, which is what the Faith Militant are wearing. It could just be a random member of the Faith Militant, but I think it's Lancel, and I really don't have any other good guesses.
Varys in disguise?
Well, there's no hood or anything. Yeah, that'd be a damn good disguise. It doesn't look
Arya in disguise.
Well, that would almost be, well, it's about the same level of damn good.
There was one other thing, by the way. We do see the contention between Davos and Melisandre.
Oh yeah, you're right. I totally forgot about that. You're right. I have that in my notes and I skipped it. He's yelling like, tell him what you did. It's like Jon is sitting in judgment or something like that. And Melisandre looks guilty. She looks like, like, yeah, I did it. I wonder what her defense will be. I really wonder. I
mean, she's been in a similar spot before and came out on top, right? Yeah. Like almost exactly had Davos yelling at Stannis about how Melisandre is this evil witch. And in the end, Melisandre's like, oh, look at my tits. I'm still in control here.
Yeah, that those tits will only work that so many times there, Mel. But no, I think she's going to live on. But I think this conflict will be interesting, and it will cause some good tension going forward. It will be because the tension has to switch away from humans fighting humans in the north. There are no enemies in the north anymore. It's now the walkers are the enemy. And this is an inhuman enemy that isn't about torturing and being cruel. And, their agenda is supernatural. It's not, they don't have human motives. They don't have, hey, you killed our family. We're coming for you. Who knows what they're thinking, if they're even thinking. They may just be beings that do things. We're having some cat thunder here for our video. And yeah, so the others the walkers are still a mystery at this point, even though we've learned things about them. We've learned where they came from, but we don't know, a lot more than that. Even though we've learned some things, there's still a lot we don't know.
We know more than we used to, but we still don't know much.
Yeah. So it definitely seems like something that will be happening next season. We may get some glimpses of it this season, but I'm guessing that most of that will be next season because there's just so much to wrap up in the natural world, the non-supernatural side of things. And I think that the focus of next season will be this great struggle. On the other hand, the episode's called The Winds of Winter. That's what this next episode's called. So there may be, some sort of footnote to everything where it's all going to start to roll itself into the whole continent being geared towards this conflict. The Game of Thrones may be less about politics and more about survival, more about having to make tough decisions with regards to just staying alive rather than right or wrong.
A quick thought. Say winter comes. I don't want to get too caught up in this because we're short on time, but say winter comes. Does it come to the whole world? Is it going to be freezing cold in the Dothraki Sea?
It should come southwards. Like the Dothraki Sea is still very far south of the north as far as the globe goes, but it's possible. I mean, if snow gets down to, say, King's Landing, then that's about lined up with the northern part of the Dothraki Sea.
And say the Dothraki army comes across to Westeros.
They're not used to that.
And winter comes and they're like all shirtless in this freezing weather. Like, I don't know if that'll be a factor that's considered at all.
Good point. Yeah, the winter will make it difficult logistically for some of these armies to do their thing. I mean, have issues with food. I don't
Can
know.
the boats sail?
Feeding
How frozen will the water be?
Yeah, feeding the horses will be a problem. The grass is like, where's the grass going to be?
Yeah.
All the snow is just, I think that will be a major challenge next season, and we may see them setting that up in this next episode. So yeah, we are about out of time. So thanks everybody. Thanks Sean.
Good to be here.
And we will be back next week to wrap the season up. We will probably do a wrap up episode after the episode 10 review. So look out for that. We may do it. We may do a live Q&A for that. We'll certainly be posting it on all our social media sites. If we decide to do that, we got a few things to work out as far as timing and schedules, but we do expect to do that, but we haven't announced the time just yet. So keep an eye out and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, everybody. Valar Morgullis, Valar Battle of the Bastardus, and Valar, see you next weekus.